All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So we are going to get started with the usual Logan Motashami. And what we're seeing here, so we'll dive into pending sales first. So what we're seeing here with the pending sales is that the total pending home sales have increased compared to this time last year. So this year we're at 429,242, and last year we were at 396,741. So that's about an 8% year-over-year increase, showing that the buyers continued moving forward despite the geopolitical uncertainty. So why does this matter? Well, pending sales are one of our best indicators of where the housing market is headed, because they're homes that are already under contract. So even with the headlines about the international conflict, inflation concerns and mortgage rates are remaining higher than many buyers would like, and people are still making the decision to buy a home, which is again an important reminder that life doesn't stop just because of a new cycle. So, why has the market been so resilient? As we see over here, we're definitely significantly above last year. Well, first, the mortgage rates started 2026 at their lowest level since 2022 because mortgage spreads have continued to improve. Also, the affordability has quietly gotten a little better over the last couple of years, but home prices are still high. The wage growth has actually outpaced home price growth, giving many buyers a little more purchasing power than they had a couple of years ago. So when you combine those factors, you get a market where buyers are adapting instead of waiting. And I think we're seeing a very similar trend here in Colorado. Buyers are definitely being more thoughtful and taking a little more time to make their decisions, but they're still in the market. Well-priced homes definitely continue to generate that activity, and the serious buyers are moving forward when they find the right property. The pace might be different than it was a few years ago, but the demand is still there. So let's jump into mortgage purchase application data. Now, remember, this is one of the best leading indicators that we have because it tells us what the buyers are doing before they go under contract. So typically, this data it leads to home sales by about 30 to 90 days. So this year, the week-to-week numbers have been pretty flat, but the bigger story is the year-over-year data. So this year, the week to week, or sorry, so this in too far in 2026, we've had 22 weeks of positive year-over-year growth, 10 weeks with double-digit year-over-year growth, and only two negative year-over-year readings. So even with the uncertainty surrounding the Iran conflict, the purchase applications held up remarkably well. Again, I think one thing that this article points out is that context matters. So last year, the growth numbers looked impressive, but they were coming off an extremely slow market. This year's growth is different. It's building off of a healthier foundation, making the numbers much more meaningful. The Iran conflict may have slowed activity slightly, but it certainly did not derail the buyer demand. Another interesting point that this specific section talks about is when we see 12 to 14 weeks, consecutive weeks of positive week over week growth, it often translates into a couple 100,000 additional home sales. And we're not there yet, but the steady year over year growth tells us that the housing market continues moving in the right direction. So, and again, I think in Colorado, we're kind of still seeing the same thing. Many buyers are taking a little longer to make their decisions, but they're still getting pre-approved and they're still actively shopping. That they're being more intentional, not disappearing. So let's jump into pending sales. So what we see in pending sales is, as far as the bigger picture, weekly pending sales came in at 72,222 as opposed to last year's 74,130. So yes, they were down slightly compared to the same week last year. Um, and if you stop there, you might think that demand is starting to weaken, but once again, the context matters. Weekly data is exactly that. It's weekly. It can be influenced by holidays, weather, or other short-term events. So I never like to overreact to just one week's worth of numbers. Pending sales are still one of the best indicators because they typically become closed sales within the next 30 to 60 days. The real question isn't why was this, or the real question isn't was this week down? The actual question is why. Now, when we jump into housing inventory, let's talk about housing inventory for a sec. So, because this has probably been one of the biggest surprises of 2026 that Logan mentions. So, last week, the housing inventory rose to increase from 830,939 to 841,547. During the same week last year, the inventory increased from 828,890 to 831,050 homes. So yes, the inventory is growing, but that's exactly kind of what we'd expect this year. Over the last year, there have been a lot of headlines suggesting inventory was surging and that buyers were about to gain all of the leverage. But if you've been following this data with us week to week, you'll know that that's not really the real story. For the past year, we've talked about how inventory growth was expected to slow after the middle of June because we were comparing against an unusually strong period of inventory growth in 2025. Now that we've moved past those tougher comparisons, we're entering a much more balanced part of the year. And I think this is where the context becomes really important. Last year's inventory was growing rapidly because buyer demand had slowed and more homes were sitting on the market. This year, buyers have stayed more active than many expected. And that means new inventory is still coming onto the market, but buyers are absorbing a good portion of it. So instead of seeing inventory explode like some predicted, we're seeing something much healthier. A market where buyers have more choices, but the sellers are still finding buyers when homes are priced correctly. As the article puts it, we've entered a period where it's going to be a good battle between buyers and sellers. Neither side has a major advantage anymore. And again, if we tie this to Colorado, it's pretty similar as far as the balance. Inventory has improved compared to the last few years, giving the buyers more opportunities, but desirable homes that are priced correctly are still going to be attracting strong interest. And that's why the local market knowledge is becoming more and more valuable than ever. Two neighborhoods can tell two completely different stories. So let's jump into new listings here. Last week we were at 75,128 new homes that came on the market compared to the previous year, 81,059. At first glance, it might seem like a pretty significant drop, but once again, we have to look at the context before we jump to the conclusions. This time of the year is when new listings naturally begin to slow down. The spring market is behind us, and as we head into the late summer and the fall, it's completely normal to see fewer homeowners putting their homes on the market. The encouraging news is that despite everything happening in the world, including the recent conflict with Iran, the seasonal pattern hasn't really changed. Housing continues to follow its normal rhythm. And one thing I found interesting in this article that is the comparison to the housing bubble years. Sometimes people see inventory or new listings increase and immediately think we're heading back to 2008, and the numbers just simply don't support that. During the housing boom, we saw probably regularly 250,000 to 400,000 new listings every week. And today we're around 75,000. So those markets aren't even in the same conversation. The other thing to remember is that last weekend included a 3-day holiday. So holiday weekends almost always impact listing activity because many homeowners choose to wait until the following week to list their home. So while this week's number came in lower than last year, it doesn't suggest a major shift in the market. I think this article reinforces something we've talked about for the past few weeks. Normal seasonality is not bad news. Sometimes we see a headline that says listings are down and people assume something is wrong. In reality, this is exactly what we expect to happen every summer. The bigger story is that housing continues behaving like a normal market instead of reacting dramatically to every headline or world event. And again, if we tie this into Colorado, many families try to get settled before the new school year begins, so listing activity naturally starts to slow down as summer winds down. That's why it's important to compare the market to normal seasonal patterns, not just last week's numbers. So let's dump into price cut percentage, and we'll finish off this article with this. So last week we were at 39.5% of active listings had at least one price reduction. At the same time last year, that number was 40%. So while we're nearly 4 out of every 10 homes have adjusted their price, that's actually a slightly fewer than we saw a year ago. And I think this is one of the easiest statistics to misunderstand. When people hear that nearly 40% of homes have reduced their price, they immediately assume that the market is struggling. But price reductions are completely normal. And typical housing market, about 1/3 of homes will reduce their asking price before they sell. The more important question isn't are homes reducing their price, it's are more homes reducing their price than last year? And the answer is no. So again, I think this fits perfectly with everything we've talked about today. The buyer demand has remained stronger than expected. Inventory has become more balanced. New listings are following more of a seasonal pattern. And because of that, sellers haven't had to become dramatically more aggressive with pricing. The article or this article does also point out something that we've talked about before. Wage growth has continued to outpace home price growth. That's quietly helping affordability improve even in a market where mortgage rates remain elevated. If rates eventually decline and the demand increases even more, we could actually see fewer price reductions going forward. Um, Now, again, I think if we tie this to Colorado, homes that are priced correctly and show well are still going to attract buyers. The listings that tend to sit are the ones that are going to be overpriced or haven't adjusted to today's market conditions. So again, pricing strategy matters. Having that discussion with your seller matters before you go on the market. All right, let's jump into the next article I have here. It's Housing Wire. VA loan fee hike proposal advances in Congress, drawing industry pushback. So, what's happening in this article? I kind of want to shift gears a minute and talk about something that could impact many of our military clients. A bill moving through the Congress would increase several fees associated with the VA loans. The biggest proposed change is the increasing the VA interest rate reduction loan, or the EARL fee, from zero point 0.5 to 1.42. So that's almost three times the amount. And then also doubling the VA loan assumption fee from 0.5 to 1%. Now, it is important to remember this is still proposed legislation, it has not become law. But why does this matter? If this bill passes as it's currently written, refinancing through VA could become significantly more expensive for many veterans. Industry estimates suggest that average veteran refinancing their home could pay thousands of dollars more over the life of a loan. Because of those higher costs, some refinances that make sense today may no longer qualify under the VA's recoupment requirements. And I think that's huge because if you know about VA is typically there's 0% down. They don't have a lot of money that they're trying to spend. So that is a big piece of it. Now, what's interesting about this bill is that almost everyone agrees with its goal. The legislation is designed to expand benefits for severely disabled veterans, survivors, and members of the National Guard and Reserve. The debate isn't about helping veterans, the debate is about how to pay for those expanded benefits. And many mortgage industry organizations support this additional benefits, but believe the funding should come from increased fees for other veterans using the VA loan program. And I think my biggest takeaway from this for us as agents is simply staying informed. If you work with military buyers or sellers, this is something to keep an eye on. It's also a good reminder that lending guidelines and loan programs can change. And that's why it's so important to have strong lender partners who stay on top of these updates and can help our clients understand their options. And I do believe that here in Colorado, we have a large military community, including the active duty service members, the veterans, the military families connected to the bases like Buckley Space Force, Peterson Space Force, Fort Carson, the Air Force Academy down in the Springs. So if this legislation does move forward, it could directly impact many buyers and homeowners right here in our state. And again, that's why I think it's another reason to pay attention to this. Um, so the discussion looks like this. If you have a client, I heard VA loans are changing. Should I be worried? It's simple. You tell them right now nothing has changed. Congress is considering a proposal that would increase some VA loans, but it hasn't become law. If you're thinking about buying or refinancing with a VA loan, the best step is to talk to your lender because we as agents stay in our own lane so you understand your options based on the current rules. Our job isn't to predict legislation, it is to stay informed so we can guide our clients with confidence as these changes unfold. So let's jump into my next article here. It's another Housing Wire, and it's the best real estate offer is not always the highest price. Here's how to spot risk. And I think this is one might be one of the most valuable articles that we cover today. It talks about something that we all deal with, multiple offers. Most sellers naturally look at one thing first, which offer is the highest? But as professionals, we know there's a much bigger question we should be asking. Which offer is the strongest? According to the National Association of Realtors, about 5% of contracts terminate, and another 13% experience delayed closings. So, what's interesting is why those deals fail. Usually, it's not because of price, it's financing, it's appraisals, inspections, contingencies. So, in other words, it's the deal doesn't fall apart because of the number, it falls apart because of the terms. And I really like the comparison this author used. Think like an underwriter. When a lender approves a loan, they don't just look at how much someone wants to borrow. They look at the entire financial picture. As listing agents, we should evaluate offers the same way. Yes, price matters, but so does how solid is the financing? Is it a true pre-approval or is it just a pre-qualification? Does the buyer have a home sale contingency? Is the closing timeline realistic? And are they likely to ask for little repair after the inspection? Every one of those pieces, I think, should be, it affects the likelihood of your seller actually getting to the closing table. And I think this is one of the biggest ways we earn our commission. Anyone can present offers. A professional helps their client understand the risk associated behind each one. Sometimes the highest offer is the best offer, but sometimes the second highest offer closes 2 weeks earlier, or it has stronger financing or fewer contingencies and a much higher chance of actually making it to the closing table. And that's the conversation that our clients want us to have. And in Colorado, we're seeing a wider variety of market conditions than we have over the past few years. Some listings are still receiving multiple offers, while the home right next to it may only receive one or two. Regardless of the market, the principle doesn't change. Every offer deserves to be evaluated based on the entire contract, not just the purchase price. Um, so the next time you're presenting offers to a seller, don't start with the purchase price. Start by asking, which of these buyers is most likely to get us to the closing table? And that one question is going to change the entire conversation that you have with your seller. All right. Now, keeping in tune with the Bed Bath and Beyond merger with Fathom Real Estate. So last week we did talk about Bed Bath and Beyond purchasing Fathom Holdings and how unusual that seemed at first. And this week I think they're giving us a much clearer picture of why they made that move. Their goal isn't to become a bigger furniture retailer. Their goal is to become what they're calling America's home ownership platform. Oh, excuse me, platform. So, in other words, they don't just want to help people furnish a home, they want to be a part of their entire home ownership journey. And this is bigger than one company making an acquisition. It's another sign that real estate is becoming more connected to technology, to home services, finance, and consumer data. They think about everything that happens, think about everything that happens after someone buys a home. They need movers, they need contractors, they need insurance, furniture. Maybe they have to repair something already, their home value updates, renovations as they live in the home for a while. Bed Bath& Beyond wants to build one platform that connects all of these together. So what really caught my attention was the three pilot programs that they're planning to launch. So the first is called a neighborhood intelligence program. The idea is to provide consumers with better neighborhood data, local market insights, and housing analytics. The second is a home value guide, helping homeowners understand what improvements add value to their home and where they should invest that money. And the third focuses on home services, which is connecting homeowners with repairs, renovations, maintenance, and ongoing support. And when you put all three together, you can start to see their bigger picture. They're trying to create one trusted platform that homeowners continue using long after they close on their home. And I actually think this reinforces something that we talked about last week. Real estate is becoming less about transactions and 100% more about the relationships piece of it. The companies that win over the next decade probably won't be the ones that simply help someone buy a house. They'll be the ones that are continuing to provide value every month after closing. As agents, that's a great reminder that our relationship with our clients should not end with when they get their keys. And this is something we can apply right here in Colorado. Think of the value that you can provide after closing. Maybe it's recommending you the trusted contractors. Maybe it's sharing local market updates. Maybe it's helping your clients understand which home improvements provide the best return on investment. Those conversations will keep you relevant longer after the transaction is over. So, before your next closing, ask yourself one question. How can I continue adding value to the client 6 months from now? If you can answer that consistently, you'll be creating more repeat business and referrals than any marketing campaign ever could for you. All right, we're going to hop over to Inman for the next two. So, a record 20% of housing or house hunters look to relocate in Q1. So, let's talk about where people are moving. According to this Redfin report, nearly 1 in 5 homeowners searched for homes outside of their current metro area during the first quarter. Um, that's the highest percentage Redfin has ever recorded. Why? And I would say there's one word, affordability. As home prices, insurance costs, and everyday living expand, and they continue to rise, most people are expanding their search beyond the communities they originally planned to live in. This isn't just about people moving across the country, it's about buyers becoming more flexible. So instead of saying, I have to live in this neighborhood, many buyers are now asking, where can I afford the lifestyle that I want? That's changing the migration patterns all across the country. And on a side note, in Command, we do actually have the ability to see the top places that people are moving to and from Colorado. If you ever want to know about that, let me know. Anyways, one thing that stood out to me in this article is that some of the hottest markets from the pandemic are beginning to cool. Places like Austin and parts of Florida saw huge population growth over the last few years. Now, those same markets are seeing that demand level off as affordability becomes a bigger challenge. At the same time, people continue looking for communities that offer a better balance between housing costs, the quality of life, and the job opportunities. So the takeaway is simple. People are becoming more willing to relocate if it means their overall financial situation will be improved. And I think this creates a huge opportunity for us as agents. Today, the buyers aren't always looking for one specific neighborhood anymore. They're looking for value. This means that we need to become experts not just on our city, but on the surrounding communities as well. If someone can't afford their first choice, are we prepared to confidently recommend a second choice or even a third option? And I think that's where we can add value. And I do think this really hits home here in Colorado. We've seen affordability push some buyers further north, further south, or out towards communities that they may not have ever considered a few years ago. Someone who originally wanted Denver may now be looking at, Arvada, Wheat Ridge, Castle Rock even, or Brighton. And it kind of just depends on their budget. But the agents who understand multiple markets, not just the one neighborhood, are going to be in a position to help those buyers. So, one pro tip I guess I want to leave with this one is take 30 minutes this week to study one nearby community that you normally don't work in. Learn the average home price, the school districts, the commute, the local amenities that might be there. And the next time a buyer tells you they're priced out of one area, you already have another great option ready to recommend. All right, we're jumping into your listings, your feed, and the AI in between. So, what's happening in this article? I want to finish our business section with something that I think every agent should be paying attention to. We've talked a lot about AI over the past year. This article isn't about AI replacing agents, it's about AI changing how consumers find information. And one of the biggest real estate companies in France has completely redesigned its listing data so that AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and Google's AI can actually understand their listings and recommend them to buyers. So let's think about that for a second. They're no longer optimizing listings just for Zillow or search engines, they're optimizing them for AI. This isn't just happening with listings, it's happening everywhere. People are getting their news from social media instead of TV. They're asking AI questions instead of Googling. Instagram is adding smarter content features. Meta is using AI to review these ads. LinkedIn is introducing collaborative posts. What's the common thread in all of that? People are discovering information differently than they were just a few years ago. And I think the biggest lesson here is that visibility is changing. For years, we focused on one question: how do I get people to find my listings? Today, the better question might be: how do I create content that both people and AI understand? That means writing better property descriptions, creating educational videos, posting neighborhood insights, answering the questions that your clients are already asking. The agents who consistently create helpful content are going to have a huge advantage as AI becomes a bigger part of how consumers search. And I actually don't think AI is replacing great agents. Excuse me. I think it's exposing average marketing. It's if your only value is opening the doors or uploading listings, then technology is going to make that harder. But if your value is educating people, explaining the market, helping your clients make confident decisions, then AI becomes a tool that helps more people discover you. And that's why I think content creation is no longer optional. It's becoming one of the best ways to build trust before we even ever have a conversation. And again, I think this is a huge opportunity for us as local experts in Colorado. AI can tell someone the average home price in Arvada, but it can't tell them what it's like to live there. It can't explain why one neighborhood feels different from another, and it can't replace the local experience, the relationships, or the understanding of the community. That's the content that buyers are looking for. So, I've been asking AI questions about, or I'm sorry. So, if you have a client that says, I've been asking AI questions about buying a house, is that okay? Absolutely. AI is a great place to start learning, but every market is going to be different and every situation is unique. My job is to take that general information and help you apply it to your specific goals, to your budget, and to our local Colorado market. So, this week, don't just post a listing, post an answer. Think about the question your clients ask you most and record a 60-second video answering it. The goal for these are not to go viral. The goal is to become the trusted source for our clients and eventually AI, so they can recognize us as the local expert. All right, let's jump into the MLS real quick here. So last week, what we're looking at, new listings was 1,656. Today we are 1,543, so a decrease of about 113 or so. Coming soon, we were at 101 today. Last week we were at 232, so we did see a significant decrease there by about 131. Back on market last week was 302, and we're at 289 this week. So a slight decrease there. And then pending down, we see last week we were at 2,313. Or I'm sorry, price decrease 2,313. Price decrease today is 2,301. So just a slight decrease of about 12 homes there. Pending was 1,251. Today we're at 1,234. So another slight decrease there. And then closed last week was 1,050, but today we're at 1,176. So we did see an increase in closed properties there. So, if there's one last thing, kind of final thoughts to wrap this week up, um, I want to leave you with one thought. As I was putting this week's articles together, one theme kept showing up over and over again, and it seems like it's showing up every week. The market is changing, but here's the good news. The changes we're seeing aren't signs that the real estate is breaking. They're signs that it's evolving. We talked about pending sales holding steady even during the global uncertainty. We talked about the buyers continuing to enter the market despite the higher interest rates. We've talked about the inventory becoming more balanced. We've talked about companies like Bed Bath & Beyond, who are completely reimagining what the future of home ownership looks like. We've talked about evaluating offers based on risk instead of just price. And we've talked about buyers expanding their searches because their affordability is changing where people want to live. And we also talked about AI changing how consumers search for homes and how they search for us. So at first, those all sound like completely different stories, but they're telling us the same thing. The market isn't standing still, and neither should we. The agents who thrive over the next 5 or 10 years won't necessarily be the ones with the biggest teams or the biggest marketing budgets. They'll be the ones who stay curious, who continue to keep learning, who adapt faster than everyone else, because every change creates two things. It's going to create a challenge and it's going to create an opportunity. And our job is to help our clients navigate the change while positioning ourselves to take advantage of the opportunity. That's what being a market expert really means. Not knowing every answer, but committed to learning and adapting and leading with confidence. So I do have one action item I want to leave you with because I want I want these classes to be more than just information. I want you to leave with one thing you can actually do this week. Here's the challenge. Create one piece of educational content. It could just be a 1 minute video, a carousel post, or even a simple social media post. Answer one question that your clients are asking all the time. Maybe it's why are the homes sitting a little longer? Is now a good time to buy? What's happening with interest rates? I know we hear that one all the time. Don't overthink it, just teach. Because every time you educate someone, you're building trust. And trust is what's going to turn followers into clients. So take that one more step. Send that piece of content directly to three people in your database, not to sell, just to provide value. And then follow up with them and ask, did you get a chance to see it? Any questions I can help answer? One post, three conversations, and that's how that momentum is going to start. So I'll leave you with this. Technology will continue to change. AI will continue to evolve. The market's going to continue to shift. But one thing will never change. People want someone that they can trust when making one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. And that's why your knowledge matters. That's why your relationships matter. And that's why continuing to learn matters. So keep showing up, keep asking questions, keep investing in your business, keep investing in your clients. And most importantly, keep becoming the kind of professional people can't wait to refer. Because when you become the trusted expert in your community, you'll never have to chase business. Your reputation will do it for you. And that's all I've got. So have an amazing week, and I'll see you next Tuesday. As always, reach out if you ever have any questions. But thank you, Holly and Jesse, for hopping on today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.